So I'm going to start this evening sitting. I'm going to choose to sit on the bolster, and I'm going to cross my legs at the shins, Siddhasana, or could be referred to as an easy sitting posture, depending on your hips, I guess, more than anything else. But it's where we take the feet nice and wide and forwards, and we get this nice foundation, very supportive, easy to sit on. You could sit on a block, or you could sit on the floor. You don't have to use a bolster if you don't wish to. I'm just choosing to be a little bit more elevated this evening for no apparent reason. I'm going to let the shoulders roll back a little bit. And then just stretch the neck a couple of times each side. Feeling a little bit tight in the top of the shoulders, neck area. Possibly too much watching YouTube on a laptop neck. All right. And then we're going to take a little breathing practice here. So I know that you are already breathing, hopefully, but this is to take some nasal breathing. I'm going to take the right hand and just place it in front of my face, index finger, middle finger on the forehead, and then covering the nostril with the right thumb. Close the eyes if you wish. I'm going to breathe gently in and slowly and smoothly through the left nostril. I'm going to exhale out through the same nostril. So I'm taking care just to cover the right passageway. And in time, when I decide to start switching with my breath, the amount of pressure that I put on the left side will be just enough to stop the breathing coming in on that side and allow the breath to move through the other side. So it really is a gentle touch, and it took me quite a number of years to get to the point where I could be really gentle but still effective. So we'll take the next breath in through the left, and then close the left to exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close at the top of the breath. Open the left to exhale. Inhale left. Close. Open right, exhale. Inhale right. Close. Open left, exhale. We just continue in our own breathing pattern, which may be slower or faster than mine. Not a particularly deep breath. I'm looking more for smooth draw in, smooth exhale out. It feels that I'm feeling the lungs gently and progressively rather than sucking all the air in and really having a third of the breath to go, but only 10% space left. Take my final breath through the left nostril and then gently bring the hands back down. Take a couple of breaths through both nostrils. I'll ease my way down into all fours and allow myself to move into a cat-cow. So just move through this very gently, opening the spine up a little bit before we get into the more unified poses. I'll let the shoulders roll back, chest forwards, tailbone up towards the sky, press into the hands, stretch the upper and middle back a little bit. Draw myself through. Now, you can continue with a regular version of cat-cow. You could choose to simply roll the ribs out to the side and lift up, so almost mimicking rolling around on the inside of a big old barrel. If you wanted to, you come up onto the fingertips and take your cat-cow from that position. Just move the emphasis of the rounding of the spine a little bit lower down, just more out of the sort of upper back and a little more into middle back. And both of those are available to you, or you can just do regular cat-cow, whatever feels good. For some reason you don't like being up on the fingertips. And then I'm going to come into a neutral position and take melting heart. So leave the hips over the knees, take the hands forwards, and then allow the chest to sink down to the ground. So starting to work into that upper back again and into the shoulders. And I'm actually letting the chest sink very low. Normally if we do this in a habit class, we'll be making an effort to hold ourselves up and not get all floppy and jelly-like, but this evening, that's exactly what we're going for. And then I'm going to walk the fingers back in. And as I do that, I'll push the hips back a little bit. It just transfers the weight nicely. And I'll use that to move myself into child's pose, where you can bring the hands underneath the forehead, or indeed, if you prefer, you can take the hands towards the toes. So it's up to you. Through the belly. Noticing how the ribs expand and contract with my breath. And I'm going to slowly lift back up. Take the block and I'm going to come into saddle pose. So I'm just going to take the feet apart a little wider than the hips and bring the knees together onto the center line, sitting back. Allow my sitting bones to rest on blocks. So that feels more intense through the front of the ankles. It can change the shape of the foot a little bit as well, as the curve of the upper part of the foot is getting pressed down. Toes are pointing backwards. Knees hopefully are opening up a little bit. Hands just sitting on the thighs, body upright. And a little time to wriggle through the spine if that feels good. whilst I'm sitting here letting my knees kind of adjust to the situation they find themselves in, I'll take the arms out wide and bring my left arm across and right arm over the top. Bend at the elbows and bring the palms together. So your variation of that, if you're adapting, and then letting the shoulders sink down and letting them draw towards the back of the mat rather than letting them come forward. See if you can mentally encourage your shoulders to draw backwards and see if that provides any freedom through the tops of the shoulders into the arms. So we're not really pulling, it's more of a sort of a mental request from the body cooperate. And then we'll change that around to the opposite side. And you might find it easier on one side than the other. You might start to tune into the increase and decrease of pressure in the shoulders as you breathe. So your ribs start to expand, the lungs fill. And we'll release our way out of that. So I'm going to use hands to just push forward a little bit and move the block out to the side and towards the back of the mat. Bring the feet out to the side. And I'm going to come into bridge pose, and I'm going to use the bolster underneath my pelvis. So if you haven't got a bolster and you're using a rolled up blanket or cushions or something like that, it's fine. It doesn't have to be super high. Bolster's a nice convenient prop. And just slowly roll the spine down to the floor and use the heels just to bring the bolster in close to my bottom. The head comes down to the floor. I can roll the shoulders into the ground a little bit, and I can just use the heel to kick the bolster underneath my pelvis. And let my bum sit down. And let the hands come to the side, and they can be super relaxed. Now, if you wish, you can lift your hands to the sky and then drop them behind you. That feels nice in the shoulders and in your back. Otherwise, we're just going to allow ourselves kind of rest and relax into the bolster, taking the feet a little wider than I would normally in bridge pose. So this is, as I said, the supported version. I'll be here for a few minutes. So I can let the muscles across the abdomen and particularly across the hip flexor. So where the leg kind of joins into your pelvis, there's a big selection of muscles there. And we're going to see if we can imagine them softening off, tuning into them, letting go, and taking some of that tension out of those muscles that has accumulated purely by the stress of us sitting postures all during the day, for long periods of time. Or in fact, if we've been walking around a lot, still would have acquired tension in there, but for a very different reason. So it seems strange that you could be considered as sitting down all day, not doing very much, and still be tiring out the muscles. It does happen. And this is our remedy. Start to breathe a little deeper. And on the exhale, draw the belly to the spine, so we tighten back up again. Draw the feet underneath so we can press the feet evenly into the floor, just to get a little bit of lift. And use the hands to move the bolster out to your left side. And lower the spine gently back down to the floor. I'm going to move the block underneath the back of the head just because I find that a little bit more comfortable in the next posture, but I'll be removing it again after that. I'll bring the feet close into my bottom and wiggle them onto the center line. And then I'm going to move the hips over towards the right and extend the left leg out. And bring my right foot on top of the left thigh. As I let the legs roll over towards the left side, I'm going to aim to bring that bolster back under the leg so that the knee and the ankle are both supported. You can use the hand to help rotate down and try and keep the shoulders on the ground. And very much stacked on top of the hip. Nice twist through the spine, but also feeling that through my abdominal region, through my digestive system. All the gooey, sludgy bits can move around. Just slowly bring the foot back onto the floor and roll my hips down to the ground again. Bring the feet in, roll over to the left side. I'm going to lengthen both legs out just as I kind of manhandle the bolster over my body. An elegant way of doing that. Arms out nice and wide and bringing that left foot in. Again, just rolling gently as I bring my foot onto the right thigh over to the right, supporting, letting myself adjust as I need to. Okay, just allow myself to come gently back onto the mat. And to just wriggle that bolster over to the other side again. Move the block out of the way. Take my hands up towards the sky. Get myself a nice straight back. Wriggle the shoulders out a little bit. Lift the hips. Get nice and comfortable. And then I'm going to take hold of the left wrist with my right hand and drop the hands behind. And then once they've reached the floor, I'm going to shimmy the shoulders over to the right. Loosen the legs out down the center line and draw the feet towards the right corner as well. You can cross the ankles over if that feels really comfortable. I tend not to do it. My back has some issues with its sciatic nerve. There are some things that I can do, and there are some things that are not so good for me to do. And if I'm doing this pose at home by myself, not teaching and talking all the way through, then I can get away with it. But when I'm not completely focused on letting myself go, thinking about watching the clock or to give some insights into the pose, and that becomes a little bit tricky for me. So if you do want to, it's always going to be the left leg over right when we go to the right, and vice versa. And slowly bring ourselves back to the center line with legs and shoulders. Get my hands towards the sky again, and this time take hold of the right wrist. Put the hands back down again. Wriggle the shoulders over. So left, let's have a few breaths. Check how you feel in your spine, through your shoulders. And if it feels good, then you can start to slowly move the legs over to the left as well. It's up to you how far you move on each side. Doesn't have to be the same. Doesn't have to be the biggest, curliest banana in the world. It could be a straight one as well. Once you've had a few breaths in the pose, you can decide how your back feels and whether you want to cross your legs. You are trying to keep both portions of the pelvis on the ground. So if you can think of your left and right cheek as being the back of the pelvis, you'll both be touching the floor with an amount of pressure. You're just breathing in nice and easy in this banana shape in the body. And then the ribs expand with our breath. Feel that stretch deepen down the body. we'll start to move back out of the pose, just wriggling the shoulders gently first, then drawing the legs across. And again, lifting the hands up towards the sky. So you can kind of get that little shake out through the shoulders. Going to come into stirrup pose, which looks like happy baby. And we're going to use the block underneath the back of the head of Yin'd. And just going to check that my waistband is out of the way. It's not a significant waistband, but it makes enough of a difference to make the pose either comfortable or uncomfortable. When you're ready, you'll draw the knees in towards the body. Take the knees wide. Slide the hands down towards the ankles. And from there, start to bring the soles of the feet towards the sky with the knees. Kind of out and under towards the armpits. Now, if you're able to reach your fingers all the way around to the outside edge of the foot, little toe side, then that's great. But if you do that and your tailbone lifts dramatically off the floor, then I would suggest bringing the hands back a little bit and just holding on to the ankles. And letting the weight of your arms and your legs work for you. The spine nice and flat. So we're not overworking the muscles in the back. We are allowing the hip joints to open and stretching all those hip muscles out, lengthening. Obviously, simplistically speaking, on one side where something stretches, the other side gets contracted. But we want that effect to be as passive as possible. And that's why we don't try to overreach ourselves. It's the old saying, less is more. That's precisely why. Because we want to take the benefit of passive weight, passive gravity into joints for this particular practice. And let myself release the feet back down to the ground. And roll on to whichever side you choose to lift from more easily. And we're going to come into a sitting posture. And we're going to need to use that block underneath the bottom. So let ourselves come into caterpillar pose. So we'll take the legs out in front and have the feet about hip distance apart. Toes point up towards the sky initially. I sit up nice and tall and I wriggle kind of onto the front edge of the sitting bones. And then just taking the hands on top of the shins, I'm going to roll the chin towards the chest and let the spine roll down. I'm going to allow a natural bend in the knees to occur. So if you've got tight hamstrings, the knees will lift a little bit. If you haven't, the legs will stay down a little bit further, but we avoid bearing weight down onto the back of the knees. We just can sit there, very rounded spine. Close the eyes. Can be quite a soporific pose to be in. If you're finding it easy to deal with the compression of the diaphragm, the breath is free to move into the back of the lungs. So it does feel different, but there's plenty of space back there. We actually have more lung tissue towards the back of the body than we do to the front. So which really is a bigger breath back there to be found? I'll try to let the legs just be. So if they sink, or if they roll out, or if they roll in, one leg goes one way, one leg goes the other way, not a problem. What we're trying to do is let those hamstrings soften along with the muscles in the back. We're working through the entire body just by taking this very relaxed pose. We'll start to lift ourselves out of this by bringing the hands back to the floor underneath us and pressing down into the ground to lift the head and the body. Noticing immediately the effect change in breath. Let's take the left foot and bring that to the outside of my right hip with my knee not quite pointing forwards. I want it sort of pointing off out to the left a little bit. I'll lean out to the left and then draw the right leg back. So I'm coming into deer pose. I'd like the right knee to be on the floor, the shin run through the arch of the foot and the toes point backwards. And then drop as best I can my right hip down towards the floor. You might even want to put a little assist in there. I'm using one finger and just helping press down a little bit. Surprising how strong one finger can be. Allowing yourself to find a comfortable space for the spine to be in, not only from side to side, but also in terms of how upright you are, your head position, etc. All of those can be experimented with just to find the easiest place for you to be in. Move gently to the opposite side. So out of this, I'm going to lean over to the left, use the hand for support, take the legs out in front slowly, give a little time for some blood to come back in. And then when you're ready, bring that right foot under. Again, the knee's not quite pulling forwards, it's kind of out to the side, a comfy distance. Lean out to the right. Bring the left foot back, see if we can get the knee to the ground. Play around to find your perfect spot. And again, just using a little bit of pressure with the hand, thumb, finger, whatever you like, just to help encourage the hips back into a neutral plane. release from there. And just bring yourself back up onto all fours. Move the block towards the back of the mat. Now, we've done pigeon pose, very familiar to most of us. The Yin'd version of that is called swan, sometimes sleeping swan. And we're going to take a supported version of that. We're going to use the bolster underneath the legs. So from this all fours position, I'm going to draw my left knee forwards towards my left wrist and bring the heel under the groin. So just move it out to the side a little bit. You might have to jiggle around a fraction, and then I'm going to take the bolster and put that underneath the body. I'm going to try and move my foot far enough forwards so I can bring that bolster through and actually rest my right thigh completely onto the bolster. And then I'm going to use my fingers to walk myself back in. It's quite a high version of the pose. Now you could be on fists. If you had a couple of bricks handy, though I didn't request anyone taking them out, you could use those and lift yourself up a little bit higher. You could, if you want to, use your hands to bring yourself up and bring yourself into a very upright position, using one hand on a thigh to support. The other hand can be wherever it's easy for it to be. Now, if you take this very upright position and it doesn't feel good, either in your lower back, it activates your mid-back muscles too strongly, doesn't feel right in the thighs or the hips in some way, then you can always bring the hands back down to the floor. It's not a problem. I do find that when I use this, my body kind of twists a little bit off to, in this case, the same side as the back leg. So I do find myself sort of countering that a little bit. That just feels good in my body. So up to you. Now, you'll notice that I didn't come immediately into this high version. I progressively worked my way through, just making sure that everything felt fine. Even the back knee has got more pressure on it than it would normally. The front leg pressure points are slightly different. It might take a little bit of getting used to. Bring the hands back down to the floor. Allow myself to tap the toes on the back foot to lift the back knee off of the ground a little bit, and then I can slide the bolster out to the side and bring myself back onto all fours. And then move the bolster over to the opposite side, much easier. Draw the right knee forwards and line the groin, and then draw the bolster underneath and through, so you get a little bit of a lift. And allow yourself to bring yourself into a comfy place. And because this is a slightly different version to how we normally work, you might notice some bigger differences between one side and the other. So again, if you want to stay on the fingertips on one side and not on the other, that's perfectly okay. Again, taking my time, I'll lift it up onto the fingertips. Just getting a little bit of confidence in the joints, muscles, within the nervous system, get used to being in a different place. And then if you wish to, you can walk in. And if there's any changes in comfort levels. In these poses, we move back out. That's very different on this side to the other. Then we're trying to let the body sit upright. So we find a nice place for the back thigh, front leg as well. You know, they're both rotating in slightly different ways. Okay, I'm going to release out of that, bring the hands down. Lift the back foot. Move the bolster out to the side and come back onto all fours. Now from there, I'm going to draw the left foot through. Start off with my knee over my ankle, and I'm going to take the foot a little bit further out to the side than I would normally if I was in a lunge. So it's not quite a wide lunge, but it's getting in that direction. And then I'm going to tuck the toes on the rear foot and just slide that knee as far back as I can. And keeping the fingertips on the floor or the hands. So I'm resting my body really into the front thigh. The knee can travel forwards a little bit as well. That feels comfortable to do. Head position is really a thing of choice. So a lot of body weight going into the stretch through the groin. And I'll move back to an all fours position. And just take a moment, transitioning, letting the muscles and joints kind of move back into their more natural state. And then we'll bring that right foot forwards again, a little wider than we would if we were doing a lunge in a hatha class. Going to walk the back foot as far away as I can. Your choice. I'll move you lean into the knee. Keep the hands flat to the floor. I'm using the knuckles for this particular one. Resting my body into that front thigh, so using the knee forwards a little bit with my body weight. Okay, I'm going to slowly move back out of this. And sit down onto the heels. Move the block behind the feet. And then allow yourself to come forward. Take the feet as wide out as the block. And then just simply roll back into a squat. Allowing the feet to be parallel or spread out, knees parallel or spread out as you require. We're going to just allow the arms to rest on top of the knees. You can lean in further forwards and have the fingertips on the floor if that feels more reassuring. We are going to get a little bit of heat generating through this front sort of low part of the shin into the top of the ankle, that joint there. Going to stretch out the quads a little bit as well. A lot of body weight coming in there. Stretching out the glutes as we sink gradually lower to the block. Pick up that just as you're sitting here very patiently breathing in and out, your breath causes you to move and wander around a little bit. The same phenomenon that we have when we stand still for a long period of time, we end up wobbling. Doesn't matter whether you're very close to the ground or high up, you still get that effect. Allow yourself to kind of enjoy that effect if you're picking up on it. Okay, we're going to move out of this into our final active pose for this evening, which is going to be seated forward fold. We're going to bring, this occasion, the right heel into the groin and then bring the left foot in, aligning heel to heel into the groin. And these are nice and wide and the shins are on the ground. You can do this with crossed ankles, but it becomes a little bit more restrictive. You might find that taking the legs forwards and crossing at the shins will be easier. But assuming that you're in the same position as me, you're going to lift the body up a little bit so the spine is nice and long, and then bring the fingers forwards and start to ease your way down towards the floor. Now, you could conceivably get all the way down to the ground. You may be on the elbows. You might want to bring the bolster underneath if it's still within reach, and then you can rest into that. You could even, if you've got a strong bolster, bring that in and let yourself lean into that, which is a really nice way of being supported in the pose. And there's a higher up versions, obviously. But sometimes that's a little bit more what the hips need. They need to be cared for rather than pushing to the absolute edge. Decide how you want to be. We'll lift from here and then diligently untangle the legs and cross them over the opposite way, which will be a completely different experience. And therefore, we treat it as if we're coming into the pose for the very first time. We explore how the hips, groins feel. We go around, get ourselves in a comfy position, and then we decide how far down we're going to be aiming to go or suspect that we'll be able to go. You might choose to be in a very different position from one side to the other. That is completely your choice. Down to this side as well, and untangle the legs gently. And we're going to come into, well, I'm going to take a reclined Shavasana. So I'm going to use my block, and I'm going to use the bolster. This really depends on your back and sizing, etc., and how big your bolster is and all sorts of things. But the idea is to take Shavasana lying down on top of the bolster, running down the center line of the mat. You have enough space for your bottom to be forward of the bolster, so as you roll down, the chest opens and your head is completely supported. It's not hanging off the end, and you can just let your arms come out to the side. Now, if you choose to just take a regular Shavasana, you don't want to use the bolsters, you're more than welcome. You could go in a different direction and take the bolster underneath the back of the thighs and have a rested Shavasana. This is a chest opening version of the same thing. You might want to do this, but feel the need to put a cushion still underneath the back of the head. So all these things are possible. We're going to be here for about 4 minutes. Now, you can be in this particular style, this reclined version, and have the knees high and the feet wide, or you can lengthen the legs out, whatever feels good in your spine. Wherever you find yourself, try to let every single muscle in your body sink and feel supported by the ground beneath you. If you're in regular Shavasana on the floor, allow yourself to start to stretch your fingers and your toes in your own time. Take that into the wrists and ankles. Take some deeper breaths and enjoy a big stretch. Legs come in slowly and give yourself a little bit of a hug before you roll to your right side and lift on an exhale. If you're with me on the bolster, it's the recline position, draw the feet a little closer in towards your bottom. And then we'll simply slide the body off towards the right and ease our way down to the floor. Slowly draw the knees in towards the body. Take a little breath. Use the hands that are pressing the ground to lift up. Take really soft, gentle, smooth movements. Coming back up to seated posture from wherever you came from to wherever you want to be. Sitting up nice and tall. Letting the hands come in towards the heart. Taking a little breath in. Just close your eyes. Let the chin drop as you slowly exhale. Draw the belly in and bow gently to the floor. On the inhale, let the breath build the spine for you. Lifting the head as you open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoyed the Yin'd out class that we've had. And I'll see you again soon.